Welcome to another episode of the 1 Year No Beer podcast. I am Rory Fairbairns, and today I am not your host. No, today you are joined by the wonderful Jennifer Fairbairns, also known as my wife. And Jen today is going to be interviewing a very special guest who's come through the Complete Control program and had a massive experience. Super excited to hear from this former professional sports person who's an absolute legend, and amazing to have taken him on this journey. I just want to let you know that this is the last episode of Series 3. Yes, we're taking a break and we're getting ready for Series 4, where we're going to take it up even more notches. For now, enjoy this wonderful conversation between Jen and Scott. Without further ado, let's go over to them.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another brilliant episode of the OYNB podcast. Today, I've got another very special guest. I know I keep saying it, but I love interviewing these incredible human beings that I do have the pleasure of coaching. And today, we're going to talk to Scott, who, well, he's going to tell his own story, but he has had a very interesting life of pro sports and traveling the world and seeing all the good sides of life, but also coming to a point where he reached out to a friend asking a little bit about what alcohol-free looks like. And this person kind of sent him OYNB's way. And that's kind of how he found his way to us. And it's been a pleasure working with Scott in the past couple of months. But I think that hearing it from the members themselves always adds this layer of authenticity and reality to our audience. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Scott to the show. Thank you so much, Scott, for coming.
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm excited. I know we have lots of great conversations, so we might as well let everyone else hear how exciting we are.
I know, right? Well, let's kick things off. Let everyone know a little bit about yourself, where you live, where you're from, and a little bit of your backstory. And, you know, I hinted in the intro earlier on how you kind of found your way to us and essentially signed up to our program and stick with the coaching program and the one-to-one coaching. And so why don't you give everyone a little bit of insight of who you are and what brought you this way?
All right. Well, I guess my story I grew up in Winnipeg, Canada, where I live now as well. I left a pretty normal childhood. I was into, as most Canadians are, hockey's pretty much a religion here. So I played a lot of hockey and all sports, hockey and baseball mainly, but I ended up leaving home at 16 to pursue a professional hockey career. I moved to Seattle, far away from all my family and friends, and finished my high school up there. And then I was drafted to the NHL at 18. I was a first-round NHL draft pick, which was a pretty big achievement for me and something I worked my whole life for. And I played hockey for about 12 years through internationally with Team Canada at various levels, and professionally in all sorts of levels and leagues, and ended up playing in Europe a bunch and all over the place. And then my career ended, and I ended up moving back to Canada, and hadn't lived here. I moved back when I was 29, and I hadn't been here since I was like 16. So I've been home to visit family and everything like that in the summers and the off season, but I hadn't lived here for a long time. So that was a big change. And then as far as getting involved with you guys, yeah, I was kind of, you touched base a bit on it, but a little bit about, hockey, from what I understand for the Europeans and listening, it's a very similar culture to rugby in that alcohol is quite a big part of it, but typically when you have a day off, the next day everyone just went wild. And so we were very disciplined when you're in training and all that stuff, but days off and when you had time off, it was like a party like you've never seen. So a bit of a binge party. And so that kind of, it was a fairly big part of our culture in the hockey world. And then I guess once I stopped playing, someone referred to it or told me it's like a dog being let off a leash, kind of, and like all this free time. And I was so regimented, or we were so regimented in the hockey world with being on time and curfews and training twice a day and all that stuff. So there's not a lot of freedom. And so when I did get my chance, I kind of ran with it. And I think I my drinking had become something that really got in the way of me achieving what I wanted to achieve in my after sports life. I've been thinking about it a long time, and a friend of mine who's from Winnipeg originally but lives in the London area, I knew he'd kind of given up drinking a couple years earlier. So I reached out to him and just asked, hey, I'm curious about this. And he sent me a link to the OYNB website. So I signed up, and that was almost 2 years ago now. And I've been making steps all along the way and following that until I made the jump to join a complete control group back in June.
Amazing. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about complete control later, but I'm just a little bit curious about asking a little bit about that life of growing up. So growing up as a kid in North America, right, which is like the mecca of elite sports, and something, nobody focuses more time and money on elite sports like North America, right? So hockey or American football or basketball or many other sports. But what was it like growing up as a kid in Canada? Okay, there we go. You got the big Wayne Gretzky up there on the wall still as the greatest of all time. But what was it like growing up in that environment and just having that as a goal and ultimately making it? And like you mentioned, at 16, you left home and then you moved to Seattle on your own. So like, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like?
I'm the youngest of three boys. I have two older brothers, so I was constantly trying to keep up with my brothers. They were big time into hockey and baseball and sports, as well as they were of the era of Star Wars, and they had big fans of all that science fiction stuff. But for me, I didn't catch that bug. I was just, from when I can remember, obsessed with sports. My parents said that I learned how to read because I wanted to read my brother's hockey or baseball cards, trading cards. So I was like, from the get-go, that's all I ever wanted to do, is become a professional athlete. So I grew up playing hockey all winter long, and baseball summer long, and many other sports as well. But it was just like every Canadian kid's dream to, we watch Hockey in Canada on Saturday night, was a big event every week. Nowadays we have hockey on every night on TV, but we used to just get the one night a week. So it was quite the treat. Growing up in Winnipeg was a perfect climate. We had outdoor rinks everywhere. It's really cold here. So, but as a kid, the cold never affected us, or me anyway. So I'd spend hours skating outdoors with my friends and playing games. To get the chance to move to Seattle at 16 was a huge opportunity for me. Back then, the internet was just kind of in its infancy, and there was no cell phone. So it was a big move to leave my family. And I went to finish my high school there. So I left in the 11th year, or grade 11, to go to a new school and a new city. And so there was lots of big changes in my life, and a little independence at 16 was, not sure what you can ask my mom, but I'm not sure if I was quite ready for that. But it was amazing, and I was just following my dream. And then I got drafted, like, as I mentioned earlier, at 18 to the NHL. And, that was quite a moment for myself and my family. We're very excited about that. And then, that it was just an amazing time to kind of accomplish some things you only dreamed you could.
But that's the thing, because so many kids want to get to that level, but not everyone makes it, right? So I can imagine the celebration and the emotion behind that with the whole family, because having kids who are smaller girls, they're not into elite sports, but they're training very hard. And I know you've got two little girls as well who are also very much into the sport. We know how much time it takes, right? As a parent, the driving around, it's the time investment, it's the money investment, and we do this, right? But we just hope for the best. But in the US, there is a big drive, and Canada, for that, to make it to the top, right? So there must have been this euphoria in your family when you actually got to that place.
Oh, for sure. And it was a lot of hard work. I did some things. My dad was so supportive. My parents, all my family was, but my dad was supportive, and he was very encouraging, and not in a pushy way. I was very lucky. You hear lots of nightmare stories about parents, but he used to give me little tips and hints of things that could make me, or even get a little bit of an edge on my competitor. So I did things like as a kid, like at 12 years old, I was strapping ankle weights to my feet and not telling any of my friends when I'd go training, because I just thought this might give me a little bit of an edge and moving forward. So I was always looking at ways to get better and compete and really push myself. So, I think things like that really helped. It just takes a lot of focus and driving. And it's, so many distractions come about when you're a teenager, whether it be girls, parties, or all that stuff. So I managed to really stay focused. It was up until I was a professional when kind of drinking became a bit more regular, even though friends of mine had started at an early age. I was really laser focused on achieving my goal and afraid to do something and make mistakes, and end up regretting some of those things. And so I really had to stay focused there as a teenager, and kind of, to be fair, looking back to it, I probably didn't have much time to going to parties and stuff like that, because as I mentioned about the hockey, I also played quite a high level baseball. I represented Canada internationally in baseball as well, and had to kind of make a decision between the two sports as to which I would pursue a career in. That became quite easy to me as shoulder injuries started to happen, and my pitching career anyways was looking less and less likely after having my shoulder reconstructed twice by the age of 19. So yeah, it was a great childhood and upbringing, and just prepared me well for leaving at 16, knowing I had that support.
Do you ever feel like you missed out? Because there is a sacrifice that comes, the training, which you happily did, but was there ever any feeling then or later that you feel like you missed out a little bit of being that kid like everyone else, getting up to no good?
Well, there were moments for sure. I remember like being in Seattle, and I would back then you had calling cards, especially for international calls, because I was calling from the US to Canada. But I would call my friends and hear about all their weekend out, and I would have probably at that point been under like a 9 o'clock curfew every night, and couldn't even go to a late show at the movies. But so there were moments where I felt like probably I missed out, and my brother would tell me on all the things he was getting up to, and but I didn't really feel that I missed out that much. When it really sunk in that I kind of sacrificed a lot or miss out on things was when I stopped playing. And I remember like the weirdest things, like even going out at Saturday morning for like a brunch, or for just like normal things that everyone else did. But we were always had matches on weekends. And so I was never separate from my team, because we'd have team meals and all that stuff. So I'd be like going to a restaurant and I'm like, oh my God, I've just felt like a dog off a leash. I was like, wow, this is amazing to have this freedom. And then I kind of look back with no regrets, don't get me wrong, but I kind of was like, wow, this is what it feels like to be normal. So that was, no, I don't regret or didn't feel I missed out, but as a teenager, there were moments, I suppose, where I kind of wish there was times where I could be a little bit more normal.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Would you say that you've made up for all the crazy times you missed out when you were younger?
I definitely made up. I crammed a lot into those first 10 years.
Well, on our side, we are seeing a huge increase in pro athletes and ex-pro athletes coming into our programs, especially the Complete Control program. And usually the motto is like they were really good at sports. They were, high-achieving individuals who were really good at sports, and they got really good at everything, which included being really good at drinking, when they were allowed. And so I guess there is a bit of that culture as well. Like you say, you train hard, you work hard, and then when you do get let off the leash, so to say, there might be a huge influx. Is that what was it like on the inside? I mean, you were fairly young when you entered it, so you might have not been too observant. But was there a point that you realized that also within elite sports there is a big degree of drinking, or problem drinking, or problematic drinking, or just a drinking culture in general?
I think we're always chasing that high that you get when you play the sports. The game ends, and if you had a day off the next day, that was typically a time when we were green lighted to go out. And luckily I was playing in the era before camera phones and everyone, the internet was, or social media wasn't really around, but it was, so we used to let loose, like, I'm talking really, like, we'd be out till 6, 7 in the morning, nonstop, wake up. Usually we'd have Sundays off and we'd just watch the football, American football. So you'd wake up probably on 2 hours sleep and get right back after it, and then hopefully stop around 10 p.m. so that you're ready for Monday morning training when you're playing during the in season. At least it was with hockey. And sure, you'd go out during the week sometimes and have a couple of beers with dinner or whatever. But for the most part, I'd say most of the guys were fairly disciplined and dedicated during the season. Off season was another story. And again, that's changed too, because you see how people are training so hard, and we used to use training camp to get in shape. Now it's like you have to arrive already with your 8% body fat. And so it would be off seasons were a lot of partying. The culture, it definitely was, it was all about the boys getting together, celebrating or going out, trying to meet girls, whatnot. So it was a big part of that life. And then afterwards it became even more so because of more of the free time, and I think probably chasing that feeling.
So going through the motions of just traveling, playing all over the world, and always looking to be in top optimal shape, optimal form, comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, and then when you get to a point where you're like, okay, working towards the end of career, or did you know this is it, I'm done now? Or was it a case of like, this is going to be my last year? Or was there a decision behind that? I mean, I know a little bit more about that, but I want you to tell our listeners, like, what was that like? And what was the transition like? And how was it difficult in any way to make that transition into, although you mentioned it's nice to be able to go have brunch at any given time.
Well, for sure it was a huge change. See, I was in a different spot, and I think we've talked, and maybe we'll talk more about it again. But I was, being a first round draft pick there comes with huge expectations. And I'm a pretty deep thinker and very hard on myself by nature. I always have been. And I think by the time I was ready to retire, I was mentally exhausted. I'd taken I hadn't quite achieved the level that was, I think, expected of me, whether that have been the results of injuries, or I think mostly it was me putting too much pressure on myself, and kept me up at night all the time. And I think I was just mentally exhausted. I actually retired at a pretty relatively young age with still opportunities to play it all over the place. But I just was mentally exhausted, and my body, I had plenty of surgeries and broken bones and whatnot, but I was ready. I think I stopped loving it, and I was feeling more depressed, and it was just more a case of, at that point, I felt like maybe I was playing because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't want to disappoint others who were kind of following my career quite closely, or feeling that they had this belief in me and I didn't want to let them down. So I think I held on a little bit longer than I was mentally wanting to. And I believe that holding a lot of those feelings in, like the way you kind of numb yourself, was to have drinks. And I think when I finally did make the decision to call an end to my career, I was at a place where I was just exhausted, and drinking made me feel better.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that because I know better now, but it momentarily numbs my struggles and my mental pain and stress levels. So I know it didn't help me. It definitely didn't help me when I say that, but I felt at the time it did.
Yeah, but I also wonder how many people listening to this can relate to what you're saying here. I just drinking to get away from making it less hard. And you said, I mean, I love how you also wash over broken bones and surgeries. Like, it's like, no, you know, just like a bruise or cut a bruise with plaster. You're like, you had genuine broken bones and surgeries, right? But it was so normal for you to, it just like, just another broken bone, right? So I can only imagine what that does to someone mentally.
Well, it's funny because I remember when we started in the CC and we talked about the trauma and stuff like that, and what kind of our root causes and what possibly could have caused us to drink more than we would have liked. And I never ever thought of physical injuries as a source of trauma that could lead to something like this. And I look back, like, I don't think there was a year from the point of 11 on where I hadn't broken a bone or separated my shoulder. So I guess that probably had underlying issues. All the physical injuries I had, on top with the stresses mentally of the expectations from coaches and agents and family. Like, I just remember when I was like 19 being totally overwhelmed, as I'm like, had the general manager of the NHL team that had drafted me, my agent, my family. I had a bad game. I had phone calls all, oh, what's going on? What happened? And as mentioned before, I'm a deep thinker. I put a lot of pressure on myself. So it was almost like that quicksand issue where the harder you try to get out of the funk, the further you get sucked in. And it was just so mentally exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so from the age of 11, and then you get drafted to the NHL in the age of 18. At that point, you've lived a lifetime at that point, right? With broken bones and, you know, expectations and all that stuff. And so there is this romantic overview of how the success, you know, how to measure success as an athlete, how we make it, right? But the weight of the expectations and what you actually have to go through, both mentally and physically, that isn't really talked about. And so, you know, coaching with you, getting to know you, you know, and even when you came into CC, everyone just said, wow, he has a big heart. He's a good human being, right? And you feel a lot. And so the thing is, if I looked at the paper, I'm like, I wouldn't have guessed that you were ex-pro hockey player. That was just kind of, oh, right, he's a hockey player. Because, you know, the gentleness of you doesn't even up to this whole tough hockey guy, which is what the world expects, right? So when I started working with you, it dawned on me, you know, the conflict that can become quite strong between this expectation of who we need to be as a pro athlete versus who this person is inside, and maybe who you had to become to live up to the expectations, right? It's a little bit of a betrayal of who you truly are in order to be this tough guy. You can still be a tough guy, but also be a very down to earth and feel a lot and be expressionate, right? So doing the work that you've done for the past couple of months through the program and through our coaching, have you found yourself reconnecting with that younger kid that maybe wasn't that tough hockey player that he had to become, but maybe that authentic side of you who feels a little bit more, who are, you know, not afraid to express their emotions and their feelings and stuff, right? That had to be put aside in favor of being, you know, macho hockey person.
I cannot begin to express how much it's helped. Like, the hockey world, was such a macho old boys club. You had to be, especially when I was coming up through the 90s and that. I think the game's changed and there's a lot more support, mental health support, and it's more accepted now. Back then, it was, you just had to keep your mouth shut and you did what your coach told you, and it was, and like you kind of mentioned, that wasn't natural. I was very competitive. I always wanted, that side of me fit in perfectly with the hockey work, but it didn't come naturally to me, for me to be this constantly aggressive, like big time alpha personality. Like, I'm trying to still be respectful of the culture, because there's lots of great things, but it was
of course.
It didn't suit my personality perfectly, for sure. So we talked about it. We did all the ego work and learning a bit about ourselves. Like, it opened my eyes to how there was a whole portion of my life there that was almost me pretending to be someone I wasn't. And that obviously leads to unhappiness and kind of is a big probably reason why I started drinking a little bit too much and from time to time. And so, and another part of that is that when I was playing, people were open about discussions. We couldn't openly discuss it. I'm struggling. Like there was days where I couldn't even, I dreaded going to the ring for training. Like I was just in a complete state of depression probably, but we were told to suck it up and go there. That was how I did. So you went no matter how you were feeling. You played games with broken arms, you played games with broken toes, but just being part of this group and having similar-minded people to open up to, like at the beginning of the CC program was so helpful for me because I'm not a private person, but that side of things I was very private about always. And like I kind of shied away from talking. It gave me a platform and a group of people who were non-judgmental, and it was just fantastic to be able to, it was almost like a load getting off my shoulders there. That I remember those first couple of weeks, like I just already felt like a new person, having a group of people who didn't judge, didn't care. We all had our experience, and it was just such a nice place to open up and really kind of heal and move on from things that I didn't realize I hadn't moved on from.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, whether we are a sensitive or vulnerable, human being should reflect our, whether or not how much we love our sports, right? And we can be vulnerable and an emotionally in touch, a person in touch with emotion, but still love hockey, right? This is the thing of not just ice hockey or pro sport. I think it's been spread everywhere in the past. It's much better now, but back in the day, it wasn't okay for men to be shown as weak. They weren't allowed. And we see this in our program all the time. It's like we talk about vulnerability and people start, they start retreating. They're like, oh my goodness, this is scary, because vulnerability has been kind of portrayed as a weakness, and boys were, like you said, toughen up, put some big boy pants on and off you go, and boys don't cry, and all those things that used to be so prevalent within this macho culture. It is changing today, which is wonderful to see. You can really see it within youth sport as well. And, watching grown-up men and women, who come into this program really release all those old beliefs about vulnerability being a bad thing, and really learn that being in touch with emotions is a strength. Being able to say, hey, I'm not okay, is a strength, and being able to lean on others, is a strength. And so I really honor that and how you embrace that. And also it was so wonderful to see you just literally just take off with yourself in this journey on personal development, just by really giving yourself permission to be both athlete Scott and, vulnerable Scott, who's in touch with his emotion, right? And so, keep that work up. But I'm curious to see as to what have those around you, what do they have to say about what you're doing now? Maybe from your wife, but also from your extended friends and peers. Because the thing is, regardless if you choose to or not, when you're a person that is a pro athlete or do something that's kind of pretty incredible for anyone else standing on the outside, and us mere mortals, we look at someone that goes, okay, they do something really cool. You become a person of interest that people will look to, and they will try and emulate, they try and copy, they try and be a little bit more like that. So no doubt have you been a bit of a leader figure within your environment. So what has it been like for you to embrace this alcohol-free journey, going through this, in front of others and showing up? Because you haven't really shied away from social events or get-togethers or sporting events. You've kind of been throwing yourself out there, and work events also. You've been kind of throwing yourself out there and just socializing and doing your thing whilst going through this process. So what's the feedback been? What have people said, and how have you felt about just owning this renewed version of yourself?
Well, I'll start off with a funny story about, we've talked about me being vulnerable with you guys and laying out my emotions there. So when I came home one day, I was telling my girls about it, and my oldest daughter just looked at me and she goes, "This doesn't mean you're going to cry around me all the time, is it?" As for everything else, so when I first started the journey, it was almost 2 years ago now. Like I mentioned, I did the OYNB, and I think I did a 6 month. I did sign up for 3 months and extended it 6 months because I was feeling so good personally. But you talk about the socializing and stuff. I was still very, very uncomfortable socially going out and kind of hiding that I was drinking alcohol-free beers and coming up with excuses. And I was still in that vulnerable stage of, I thought I had to be this person. I was always, they used to joke I was the fastest casual beer drinker they knew. And like I could drink a pint in a very short amount of time. I guess a bit self-conscious about how I was to be perceived, and are they going to be judgmental? Are they going to think he has a drinking problem? Or is it, are they going to think he did something bad? Like all those thoughts were going through my head. So I was always a bit nervy going to but I tried to still go as much as I could. And I figured it would eventually become more of a normal feeling and I'd get over that. And I think the first year and a bit, with just the OYNB, I had all these long stretches. I was doing alcohol free, but I never really got to the root of why I was living the way I was, or why alcohol had this kind of grip or effect on me. And that is when I reached out. I think it was back in March of last year to start with give the CC program a try. I knew it was going to be something a little deeper and more personal. So I started that in June, was the start of my complete control group. And that was like opening Pandora's box of just adding these tools that I didn't have and going in deeper dives and really helping me to feel just comfortable and confident, which is such a weird thing because I always was, as like growing up, confident, sure of myself kid. I was always kind of the leader on the teams I played on, and follow me, I'm going to do the right things. But then I think in my own head, realizing that my drinking was kind of taking control, I lost that. I felt a little bit ashamed of kind of the life I was living in my head, just being self-judgmental. So it took me until doing the work with you and everyone in the complete control program to really just find myself again in the real Scott, the true person I know I want to be, and I knew I can be again. I think I was just kind of hiding a big part of me through drinking and trying to please others. Again, to refer back to hockey, that was what it was. You're trying to be someone you weren't, so you're not getting yelled at or screamed at by your coach or being judged by your teammates if you're a little bit on the sensitive side. And so I think I lived kind of feeling not sorry for myself, but a little bit like ashamed that I'm doing these things. But then again, after a few drinks, I had that feeling that I was confident again, but that was short-lived, obviously, when you're riddled with anxiety for days after. So, but it was just, like I said, it was amazing to get to a point where I could really start the introspective work again and try to really recapture the best version of Scott.
Let's pause just for a brief moment. I just want to share with you some of the heartfelt feedback from our incredible Complete Control community members. Listen to this.
I don't know how I signed up. I think I just got an ad on Instagram and just got a whim, just hit the button and did a call and then signed up and didn't really consciously think much about it. And then after that, I was like, what did I just sign up for? Wait a second here. Like, far exceeded my expectations. I'm usually extremely skeptical, so I don't know how I even signed up in the first place, but whatever it was. So it's just amazing how like the transformation that I've seen, and even the drinking part is just kind of it was the Achilles heel, but it's kind of just the superficial problem. And it's like, once I kind of clear that up, there's so much more possibility. And you know, the exploration discussions with Gary, with Candice have just been so powerful, and they both kind of focus on a different area. And then with Glenn kind of looking at my data, and with my cohorts or classmates, or, you know, it's just been everything has just been so powerful and kind of supportive of, you know, completing the whole picture of how I do this. So just really grateful and yeah. And also just feel more grateful, and not only just for all of you, but just in life in general. It's just a little bit more clarity and peace and calm and so forth. So
I
am incredibly grateful for this entire program, everybody on this call, and everything that we were able to experience. I think that it delivered more than I expected. Honestly, I like I've said before, I've done a couple of like challenges and different things, and I think that this, beyond examining my relationship with alcohol and making, I think, pretty good strides in staying alcohol free. I think it taught me a ton about myself and how to like examine my habits and my thoughts and those kind of patterns and ways to approach the things that worried me the most in this experience have just been invaluable. I think I'm leaving feeling stronger in general, more self-aware in general, and just really more anchored in who I want to be and what my values are and how I can, take better steps to achieve those. So it's been fantastic for me. And then again, our team, I really appreciate all the feedback and support from every single person on this call, but my cohort as well. It's been great.
So I love everybody that I've met here. I have loved the program. I am not an emotional person like this, but this has changed my life. It has given me a life. And there's other things I need to do too. But I don't have to do alcohol anymore. So thank you.
It's been an amazing journey and I appreciate the professionalism. Whenever I feel the stress, there's something that I can go back to everybody and the sharing from everybody and the professionalism of the program. So I loved it and I've grown a lot. So ups and kisses.
One word is transformational. That's a word that's been bandied about for decades, but in this, it is absolutely accurate. If I was to use one word, this was a great investment. It's not self-help, it's self-realization. It's super powerful, but it exceeded my expectations. Or maybe it was Sharon who said that, or maybe I'm exceeding my expectations, and I like that.
The program has been I'm hugely grateful for the program. I think the journey for myself has been amazing. I mean, I remember telling, I don't know if it was Candace or Gary, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the program, I was like, I can't stop thinking about not drinking. It's in my head. Every day I'm thinking about not drinking. And it's like now I'm not even thinking about it. It's just like my life has sort of stepped on. I'm excited about the future. Things are looking good.
I just love sharing the things people are saying about our complete control program. Okay, let's get back into the episode.
What would you say was the game changer for you? Because you said, so when you tried the alcohol-free before, you did it, but it was tough owning it, because you were kind of doing it for maybe not the right reasons. Like we said, you were just doing alcohol-free. So what was what was it within complete control that you would say was the biggest game changer for change?
It's a good question. There's so much of it, but I remember, I believe it was the second week where we went really, really deep and learning. I think we started learning a bit about the ego side of things, and I actually understood there was reasons. I was not being who I was. I had created this kind of alternate side of me that kind of hide behind so that I didn't stick out as this weird, sensitive, kind of gentle, but yet 6'4", 230-pound hockey player everyone expected. So I think it was just, it was almost like a aha moment. Like I've been there all along. I've just been pretending so long and masking so long through alcohol and trying to be what others expected of me. And I knew that they liked that version of me as well. So I just had this moment where, like we said, in the OYNB, well, I thought it was fantastic and it laid the groundwork and really got me thinking on things I needed to go deeper, to learn more about myself. And it obviously was more of a commitment. So it and more of I didn't want to let anyone down. So I really did the work. I did the deep dive, and I really wanted to find out what I had never done any of this. I'd worked with sports psychologists and who all told me I was mentally not fit to be a hockey player because the aptitude tests and everything there, like I just didn't fit into that. Most athletes can have a bad game and forget about it and move on, and they're a bit simpler thinking that lends itself more to, I think, to being you need to have a short memory and not be so hard on yourself. And that was something I really struggled with. I'd lose sleep. So yeah, it was just that whole real deep dive into all the things that had happened to me and the pressures I felt. It kind of just, I've been put them away in a compartment, and that in complete control. For the first time, I really felt comfortable being open and honest and not feeling like anyone would judge me. I guess we've all got our own story. I think I thought maybe my trauma wasn't good enough. It wasn't as bad as there's people in our group who had lost children and all that, like horrible things that happened to them. Here I am complaining about having a professional sports career and the stresses that came with performance expectations and physical injuries. So yeah, it was really, really, really helpful for me.
So, and exactly what you said there is that I just didn't think that my trauma was relevant because some other people had a much worse time than me, right? This is what we see so many people coming into this program, and they have exactly that mindset of like, well, there are so many people out in the world, they have it worse than me, so I should just be grateful, which is, we should always practice gratitude. That's one of the things that we do in the Complete Control program. We always encourage gratitude practice. However, we can't disregard or deny our own story. And I think that's what a lot of people do, because one, they're told that you should be grateful, you're healthy, you've got your health, and, there's people in the worst having worse off. So just, get on with it in a way, which can be helpful, but not if there's a source of hurt beneath it, right? And so, hearing you say that, I remember also you having that moment where you went, I just didn't think that my hurt or my trauma was as important. But you didn't live the other people's lives. I always say this, but you didn't live their life. You didn't go through what they went through, bless them. Awful situation, but you wouldn't know that situation because that's not how you live. All you know is your life, right? And you've lived your life. And there was a lot of hurt. And I mean, beginning of this podcast, you mentioned, from the age of 11, I don't think there was ever a time where I didn't have a broken bone, up until you finished your hockey career. How many years in total did you play? Let's say 11.
Well, from
yeah.
17 or 18 years.
I mean, right. So when you look at it in that is a lot of hurt for one kid that turns into a young adult, turns into a man, right? But there's a lot to go through. And whoever is listening to this and they go, well, I wasn't a pro athlete. Okay, well, what's your story? And the thing is, I always encourage people to check their own story. What was your life like? And what was that in your eyes? And how have you carried that? And how have you made good? Like, what narrative have you created to kind of get on with it, right? Because that's easier than to kind of sit and linger on something potentially uncomfortable and stuff. And this is what we do in the program, right? It's a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning. Like we have to kind of draw you guys out there because we're asking you to give up who you think that you are in order to discover who you truly are, right? And although you knew that, I didn't really fit in as an athlete, being asked by a group of people to kind of let go of everything that you think what was that like?
I'm quite a social person. I love meeting new people. And again, this is another personality trait that didn't fit in with the sports world, especially hockey is very cliquey. And whatever city I was living in or playing in, I made friends outside of the team. Usually I love to get to know love to experience the actual living in a different city and meeting people and understanding a bit about them. So there was a lot of teams I took a lot of grief from coaches and teams because I had friends outside of the team where I said, we should all hang out together. And if you're not with your team all day long, you're not committed to this team or to this. So I loved getting the chance to meet these people, but I went in super nervous. I remember the first call with I was away on a work trip. I was in Toronto, and I remember the first like call to introduce that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was like sweating. I'm like, oh God, and feeling uncomfortable, like that nervous feeling before you public speak kind of thing, even though it was just 12 of us on camera. But I instantly felt like we were all here to understand and to support each other. And it was, what really was really nice is because it wasn't about demonizing alcohol or feeling shame about if you slipped up or anything like that. It was more just focusing on who we want to become and how we can, and that's when it really sold me. Like, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm in the right place, because the whole starting over again and counting over again, like I never looked at myself, and I don't think I ever was alcoholic per se. I definitely drank way too much when I drank. Like, I was a big time binge drinker, and I was just like coming to this place not unsure of what everyone was going through, and if I was going to be the only person that drank the way I drank, or if it was going to be people who drank every day. And when I got there, and there was a mix of all of us who we all had an issue with alcohol, but we were all really just trying to be the best version of us. The focus wasn't just on waking up every morning and not having a drink and thank God we made it, because we just wanted to continue living our life and not have the thought of alcohol dominating our life, or counting every day or whatever. It was more just about how we become the best version of ourselves, and everyone was buying in together, and we were all open and sharing, and there was crying and laughter and everything. And it was just something I hadn't experienced. It was almost like being on a sports team where you're trying to pull together to achieve a common goal. But just the non-judgmentalness was very special.
You mentioned that, not counting days, because and this is no judgment to anyone who finds counting days helpful, because it can be helpful, especially in the beginning. I would say usually the first 7 to 14 days is very helpful kind of for people to kind of focus. But it's something that we see people coming in and they're really going all in on their self, not focusing on how many days they can go alcohol-free, but focusing on this version of themselves that they're wanting to become, who they want to be, right? And there's, again, no judgment on who we've been before. It doesn't really matter who we've been before. All that matters is who we want to become at the end of the day, right? And we see very quickly how people, when they start focusing on who they're trying to become, they stop counting the days very quickly, because even if they have, let's say, a slip up, they count it as a learning opportunity, because that's what we need to do in order to shame ourselves, or instead of shaming ourselves or judging ourselves because we didn't do the thing we set out to do. Well, what if we change the narrative from my goal is to be alcohol free, full stop, to my goal is to be the healthiest, most authentic version of myself. And that is a person that has flaws. That is a person that makes mistakes, but I'm also a person that make mistake and learn from it. That's when everything changes, right? So let's be authentic. Let's share with the listeners, what has your journey looked like on the alcohol side through this, coming into doing complete control and then continuing into the limitless continuation program and stuff. Why don't you share a little bit what it's looked like for you and where you're at now, and how you feel about where you're at?
Okay, well, I'll start even back to February 2022 when I first started with OYNB, and I put together right off the get-go a 6-month stretch without drinking, and I watched the daily videos and I was journaling, which made me feel helped with accountability. Then the summer came and I had a couple months where I was very moderate, way less than I previously drank, for sure. So I was very mindful and moderate, but I still had some drinks. We had family from the UK came to stay with us, and for 4 weeks, my nieces and nephews and brother and sister-in-law, and they were, so we'd spend some time holidaying, which I thought, okay, I'll have a couple drinks here and see how I do after doing that 6 months in. And I didn't feel great. So I was like, I want to go back to that. So I did another 4 or 5 months back with OYNB, following all the, and then about spring of last year, I had a few really moments where I felt I was slipping back into my old ways. Like I was doing 2 months without a drink, but then there was those Friday afternoon work lunches that started popping back up again. And I was kind of getting to a spot. My daughters are getting older, and they were seeing, even though it was so much more infrequent than before, I just was being more mindful of my family and my daughters seeing me in states that I was like, I wasn't proud of. So that's when I joined CC, and that was in June. And I went 4 months totally committed through the program and was just loving meditation. It was so helpful. I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk on that later too, but just everything in the program was wonderful. And then I had as you know well, I went away on a business trip in September, just after 4 months. And I didn't do the prep work that I needed to do. And I had a couple days there where I had some drinks, and I was back on the road. And I don't know why or what led to it, but I was weak, and I had a couple of nights where I drank quite heavily. Came back, we're in at this point I'm in LC, and so I am working with you, obviously. So I felt a bit ashamed, and I must say, Jen, you really helped me, because the old Scott, that was the way he felt, really anxious and ashamed, but you kind of really helped me with being less hard on myself. And that, I definitely got through that week with lots of help from you. Like I'm talking about getting through the week, like nothing bad happened or anything. I just was trying to get over the anxiety of it.
Yeah, exactly. You're just really hard on yourself. I remember it so well, but that's the thing, is that that is a pattern that you had from before. It came with you, because like you were, all of a sudden you were not perfect, and you've been conditioned your whole youth to be perfect, to live up to a certain standard, as expectations by others. All of a sudden now there's no audience. It's just Scott for Scott. And that's where, this is for everyone to take in, is like, when we feel I'm going to be judged by others, like, who's there? No one cares. No, there's no one that we need to.
Another learning part from that experience, that's something that I've taken from that, was, although it seems like when you're on the road and you're away from, like, kids aren't going to see you, it seems like a great time to, let loose and have clients who are having dinners, and they expect me to be a certain way, because I always was with this energetic guy who would drink whiskey or beer till whenever hours of the day. So I let those expectations of others, I think I don't know why I let it influence myself, but I slipped back into that way. But what I was going to say, that one thing I learned too that's going to help me moving forward, is that being on the road, traveling a lot, which I've done for work over the last 12 years or so, it can be lonely being in your room by yourself in a hotel. And it was brutal coming down off that. I think a lot of, that's the time and place to do it, like if you're going to let loose and have a few drinks. But it was awful for me, because you're missing your family, and you're in your room by yourself, all these thoughts. And I got into a really down spot while I was there. It wasn't until I got back home and started, back with the family, and with dealing with meeting with you, and you kind of talked me off the ledge. Not literally, but
not actually.
Like, okay.
No.
So yeah, that was, so anyways, I think
no.
learned big time from that. And since that point, I've been really back on not drinking. I love waking up every morning and feeling like I'm energized and ready to conquer the world and feel. So I know I can achieve that.
And so, listening to that, for anyone hearing that, the amount of reflection that goes, and this is something we coach heavily on in the Complete Control program, is reflection. That's kind of part of our big pie of habits that we need to keep up with and keep in touch with. And that, exercise, nutrition, breathing, meditation, which we'll talk about a little bit more now. There you have your own choice to enter there. There's connectivity, connection, and reflection is in there. And reflection is, I think, something that people don't do much of. And reflection you can do in many ways. You mentioned journaling also. That's a great way to kind of reflect. But in that instance of going away on that work trip, it doesn't matter what happened. It just, the important thing is that you reflect over why, what happened there, and how do I feel? How did that make me feel? And then we start measuring up. I always talk about the cost of like, okay, so this is the cost of going back to old habits before. It's there. I can choose to take it if I want to, but I'm just going to choose the other way because I'm really enjoying feeling connected with my kids, with my wife, with, just with myself. And I'm enjoying that. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to demonize myself for what I've done in the past. It just means that, hey, that's just a great opportunity for learning. So, speaking about reflection and journaling and meditation, let's talk about meditation for a little bit. And what meaning did meditation have to you before entering into complete control, or even OYNB, wherever you kind of picked it up? But we go in really hard on that in the complete control program. What was your experience before, and how did that develop during it?
I'd given meditation a try a few times over the years and tried consistently for a couple of weeks here or there, but never could fall into a rhythm. And it always felt like I couldn't get it. I think that's a common problem with a lot of people when they start meditation, they end up just giving up. I just was lots of distractions, no matter what I did, if I lit incense in a dark room or whatever, I tried everything to try and get this over, and I couldn't figure it out. But I don't think I stuck with it long enough. So when I did join the I fully committed myself to the complete control program, and I wanted to make sure like I meditated every day, I journaled every day, the stuff that was asked of us I just wanted to get the full experience and not cheap miss. Like I was really serious about making this change and becoming this better version. So I did meditate every single day, and I think it was probably around the third week that it just kind of clicked for me. I had a really crazy experience where I was like almost living experiences from my youth back. That was like, I woke up almost like tears streaming down my face. Like I was just like, oh my God, that was unbelievable. And so I wanted to chase that feeling again. And you're not going to get it every time, but I just think it really gave me that feeling that this is something that brings peace to me and calms me down. The breathing, the body scans, the meditation. Now I do that every morning before I get up quite early to go work out, before my family wakes up, before the kids are up, and before got to get them ready for school. And so I get up at 5 and I do my meditation, and I head to the gym about 5:45 every day, or do, whether it's meditation or breath work or the gratitude body scans and all that. So it's just given me peace of mind, where I used to wake up with the squirrels in my head going crazy. Oh, you got this today, you got to stress with that, you've got 2 days to get this done. It's just given me an outlook, a positive outlook every day. Let's say I maintain that every day. We all have our issues, but it's given me the best chance to have a positive day, I feel, is to continue with this. And it's been so good for calming myself down when I'm feeling anxious, or which kind of times previously would lead me to go on those afternoon lunch meetings that end up being 5-6 hours of consuming alcohol. And so I'm using that instead.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember, hearing you go through the motions of a busy household. Like anyone who has kids, will know what that means. It can be lovely and it can be chaotic. But I remember this one occasion when you told me about how there was carnage at the house. There was other kids. There was lots of kids. There was probably a puppy, and there was a house renovation, kitchen renovations, and all that. All that carnage. You kind of just went, nope, that's it. I'm off to my room. I'll be meditating, right? And I mean, the strength in that is incredible. And to power through that feeling of like, oh, this isn't for me. Because I think that's what we hear most from people is like, oh, I tried meditation. It wasn't for me. And they've tried maybe once or twice. And they're not hovering a feet off the ground like a monk. And they just they have such high expectations of what should be happening. Whereas if we just take that moment, just sit with ourselves and breathe and allow ourselves to connect just to our breathing to begin with, but then just let go of the resistance of what we think should be. I think that's when you can get to these moments where you might just connect with pieces of you that is floating around. Like you said, you woke up from one meditation just like tears streaming down in a good way, right? Because you're allowing yourself to feel. But I think maybe that's also why people tend to avoid it because they're like, oh, but I spend so much time trying not to feel.
And I think they also, some people expect, like when I first started meditation, I didn't know a whole lot about it. I just knew I wanted to be like monks, and like you're saying, but you have these high expectations that you're going to get a feeling like that or have a moment like that instantly, and it's going to happen every time. And I think just to people who are struggling with it need to understand that it's normal that to be a bit scatterbrained and things are popping in your head and you're focused so much on trying to push them out, but that's okay. Just welcome them in. So I think it took a while for me to understand that having sessions like that is okay. You're not going to, and it still gives me a peace of mind. And I'm at a point now where I when those things come in, like you said, we kind of channel them and just feel, I start feeling my body at that point more, just the sensory body scanning I find really good too, to kind of deflect those when lots of stuff is coming at you and you're trying to be at peace. So it's the tools I've learned have been fantastic.
So if anything, and again, this is just a question that if you have an answer, if not, no worries, but I like asking this, and that is like, what has been the biggest surprise during this journey of self-discovery, personal development this past, let's say, since you started CC, since you started really working on yourself? What has been the biggest surprise for you?
I think I was so focused on wanting everyone to like me. I was pleasing people, and that was leading to drink. I just don't think I saw a way to get past that feeling of wanting to please. So if anyone called to go, oh, do you want to have a meeting? Let's go for beers. I was afraid that if I said no, I would lose those kind of friends. So I feel like but the biggest surprise to me is just how quickly that program, and I'm not getting overconfident here because I know I'm going to be working on this forever, but how quickly it just brought me back to being I'm just confident in myself, but like genuine confidence, because I've always been I always was, up until hockey kind of took its toll, that person who didn't care really what everyone else was doing. I did, and I don't mean that in a way that I didn't, who cares what they're doing? I mean, like I would do what I marched to the beat of my drum, and I knew I was doing things right. I was confident in that, and I stuck to my guns. If I didn't think something was the right thing to do, I wouldn't do it. Where now that alcohol came in and influenced me the other way. So I do just think of how, like, the speed of which I really feel like I found myself, at least got myself pointed in the right direction of achieving exactly what I came here to do. I think the first time we talked, I said I wanted to feel that joy and passion that we all had when we were younger, not all, but I'm assuming most of us did. But just a pure joy, not letting those anxious, stressed feelings come in, and being present all the time, which is very hard. But it's been really a huge surprise and lift to myself and to my family, for sure. I know they'd all say what a change it's made in me. And so I'm just super proud to have done all that. And one other thing, little quick thing, that is, I think I had a fear that people were going to be judgmental and not drinking and you lose your friends. And for sure I don't think I'm invited to as many social gatherings as I once was because of it. But I would say that fear is unfound in a lot of places. Like, everyone's been so respectful, and lots of people are picking my brain and really interested in kind of making the same changes. I think they see I've physically transformed my body. I've lost quite a bit of weight throughout the last few years, and just overall healthy look, I believe. Even though my hair is going whiter by the moment, might have been. I feel, and I think people can see that when you see someone who's really kind of finding themselves again. It's noticeable.
So for anyone looking to, I don't know, anyone who's curious, sober curious, or, kind of going, I'm not sure, I'm kind of feeling like, I feel similarities with Scott. I maybe have been playing this tough guy, and I'd speak out to all the men out there for this, because many have been expected to play a certain role and a certain part in life and in the world, in their families, right? You know, so what would you say to anyone that is kind of like, gosh, sounds a lot like me, you know, but it's like, but how could I ever let down this facade of this tough guy? This is what people expect of me. It's who I'm supposed to be. How the heck am I even gonna even try to rediscover myself without looking like a fraud or something? So what would you say to someone on the cusp of trying to figure out whether they want to do something?
I think if you're even considering like that you would like to give up alcohol, or if it's a thought there, I so highly recommend giving the program a chance, because it's hard for us, especially for men. From what I understand, I've never lived as a woman, so I don't know, but for men to share emotions and stuff like that is super difficult with friends I've known for my whole life. And this brought me into a group, and I've met a lot of friends here that I'm sure I'll be in touch with for the rest of my life. But we laughed, like we're like, it's so easy because we didn't know each other in a different life, or we've only met through this, that we can. So I've met so many people in here who, like, I've got guys that I now that live all over the world that I can kind of reach out to and say, having a tough day today, like really, or I'm going on a business trip and I'm thinking, I'm worried about it. Like, am I going to slip back? So there's this support, and it's introducing you a bunch of people who are non-judgmental and really supportive of me and the changes I'm going to make. And they like me without having to Frank the Tank pound 10 pints back in a less than an hour, kind of start the night off. That was the start of the night. But so it's just been so nice I still love all my friends and they're starting to understand it and come around to like the new Scott. But it's been just, if you're feeling that way, like you're wanting to make these changes, like time is precious. And part of me, one of the only regrets, I don't regret a lot of things in life, is that I probably didn't start this process a few years earlier. And I think, so I just would recommend just try it. Like, no one's going to judge you. People are supportive. The world's becoming way more prevalent in like the options. I couldn't believe when we were back in October in the UK, how many pubs, alcohol-free beers on tap, and it's the same here in Canada. You can get drinks anywhere. They have a mocktails list everywhere. It's more accepted than it was probably even 5 years ago. Like way more accepted. So give it a try. I promise you, it's not easy, but the deep dive and learning more about myself, just like not just in the drinking side of things. I think just in my own mental health, it's helped me so much. And rediscovering kind of that young Scott and the genuine joy and being present. Like it's there.
I love that. And I have to say, in the Limitless, which is the continuation program after Complete Control, I mean, I love those group calls, coaching with the in-group form, because you have all these people from all over the world, all walks of earth, right? And very few people know what the other person does for job, right? Because nobody cares. It's just that beautiful environment where everyone is just equal and everyone is just there to work on themselves. And many are swimming against the grain in their personal environment, because most people are just still drinking, still doing all this stuff. But we always say that, don't wait for others to catch up. Go and discover yourself, because there's always going to be a crowd. And like you say, yeah, there are some parties you don't get invited to. I'm like, if there's some parties I'm not invited to, I wouldn't want to be there anyway. That's it's like the natural culling of how it works, I like to say. No, honestly, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this episode, and I hope that, I mean, I keep referencing men, and obviously there's a lot of women out there also who maybe have not been as in touch with their emotions or not been allowed to express their emotions. So we're not limiting that. But I think what's so specific about you and your background is that I know that a lot of men in that situation are going to be able to relate. I know there's going to be a lot of, particularly the North American audience, who've gone through similar experiences like you have, who will be able to relate. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with them. And I just love watching you grow and evolve further. And this is for everyone listening, is like what you hear here is just a human being trying to be the best version of itself. And then we do something that we are not happy about, and then we learn from that, and then we move forward. But as long as we keep learning, we're growing, right?
Thanks so much. I know I've listened to a lot of your guys' podcasts, and they've helped me. So I love getting the opportunity to hopefully people can listen and learn a few things and relate. So thanks for giving me this.
Absolute pleasure, Scott. All right. To everyone listening, thank you once again for tuning in and for supporting us. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so you don't miss out. And we can also have a wider range of reaching people who want to hear what we've got to say. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye for now.
All right. Well, that was amazing. What an incredible story. Maybe that could be your journey. Maybe that could be your story. If a little part of you is thinking, what is this complete control thing and can it help me? Then why not book a call with the team and find out more? You'll find the links in the show notes below, or just head to oneyearnobeer.com and you can click on complete control or take the quiz. It will direct you to complete control and you can book a call to talk to my team from there. It's amazing the results we are achieving for people, because the issue is not alcohol, right? Alcohol is not the problem. Alcohol is what you are using to treat the problem. And all we've got to do is address the thing that's causing it, and that will put you in a place where you can take it or leave it. Okay, as I said at the beginning, this is the last episode of Series 3. It's been a riot. Wow, we've had some incredible guests, scientists, some amazing speakers, some influential people. We've had incredible people's journeys through complete control in our other programs. Get yourself ready, because Series 4 will be coming soon-ish. Not too soon, because I need a break, but it will be coming soon. Thank you as always for enjoying the podcast, and don't forget to check out Complete Control. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.